Welcome everyone to Charts Free webinar series. Today we have Jen Belk-White presenting on recharging your resume. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Tara, and thanks everybody for being here. As Tara said, today's session is on recharging your resume, and let me first start by introducing who I am and why we're here. What we're going to look at today is the goal of the resume, what the different resume elements are, some specific tools and strategies that you can use to really give power to your resume and help it stand out from the pack. Some mistakes to avoid, an opportunity for you to ask questions about really anything that's on your mind, but what about this? What kind of circumstances, what do I do if my situation's different? Then I'm going to give you some resources, and at the end, for anybody who would like to stick around, we'll give you some bonus content on cover letters. So let's start with me and why am I here? You can see by the letters after my name that I do a lot with human resources, and I've got 20 years of HR and training experience. So I've sat on the side of the desk that's reviewing resumes for many, many, many years, and I've seen a lot of what to do and what not to do. And more importantly, over the course of my career, I've spent nearly $4,000 on resume consultant services. So what I've done in today's webinar is taken everything that I've learned from them and I'm giving it to you at no charge. So you don't have to spend the time and the money doing what I have done. So what's the goal of the resume? I'd like to get your ideas. So if you wouldn't mind just popping a note in the chat, what you think the goal of the resume is. Let's see what people's ideas are. You find the chat. Okay, so, well, Erica nailed it. To get an interview, that's the only goal. The goal of the resume is to get you in the door for an interview, whether it's a phone interview or to actually come in for an interview or a Zoom interview in today's world. The goal is not to get you a job. The goal is not to give a biography of your entire life history, your entire career focus. It's to get an interview for a specific job. And so that's our focus today, is what do you need to do with your resume to get an interview for a job that you're interested in? So let's start with some basics, talking about the different elements of a resume. Your name and your contact information, of course, is essential. A branding statement is optional, but very strongly recommended. And you're going to follow that with a professional summary or career profile, whatever terminology you choose to use. A list of your areas of expertise or core competencies. Again, you can use whatever heading you choose, but something where you're going to be able to highlight your strengths. Then your experience, followed by education and any certifications that you may have. You may also choose to include professional affiliations such as CHART or other groups with whom you're affiliated. Now you'll notice that an objective is not on here. Resumes that have objective statements are pretty much 1982. So that's not something that is on a modern current resume. So your objective is clearly to get a job. And really, I guess what it boils down to is the companies that you're applying to don't care what you want. They care what they want. And that sounds pretty blunt, and I'm not saying that companies don't care about their team members, of course, but they're looking to see what you can do for them, not whether they're going to meet your objectives. So these are the elements. We're going to go into some detail talking about each one. And let's start with name and contact information. Again, pretty straightforward, but there's some things that you want to make sure that you do. With your name, top left or center is best. You don't want to go too big. I'm going to show you a couple examples of some resume templates from Microsoft Word where the name just takes up way too much real estate. You don't want to waste space on that resume by putting your name in monster font. Include your LinkedIn profile link, and if you don't already have so, you should have a custom URL for your LinkedIn profile. I'm going to show you in a few slides how exactly to do that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but you want to really use that to help brand yourself. a professional email address, not the, beachbabe27@hotmail.com or whatever, but a professional, preferably also not a Hotmail or an AOL. Those can kind of flag you as being a little out of date. So if you have a Hotmail or AOL email account, a suggestion is to get a Gmail or a Yahoo or something a little more up to date that you can even have forwarded to your other email so you don't miss it. Your LinkedIn profile and your email should be hyperlinks so that they can just click directly on that LinkedIn profile and find you and not find all the other Jennifer Whites that are out there in the world. So especially for those of us that have pretty common names, make sure you've got that hyperlink profile. And then do be sure if you go onto 2 or 3 pages that your name, email, and phone number are on the tops or bottom, header or footer in all of the subsequent pages. So again, I said I would show you some examples of some just screenshots that I took of some of the Microsoft Word templates. This is huge, all the important stuff is down here, the contact info, the objective, well, not the objective because we already talked about that, but the experience, the education, that's what I want to see. Your name should not take up that much room. Same with this one, the paralegal and then all this white space here, it just does not really highlight the important parts of the resume. So something pretty simple, straightforward. I'm going to show you 3 different examples, just screenshots from the tops of resumes. So here it's in the right-hand side, but still very easily accessible with a link that you can get to. We're going to talk about what's on the left in just a few slides, so we'll just hang tight there. Here's another, the name pretty simply, and then contact information. Notice here there's no city or state, and instead it says available to relocate within the US because this person was not geographically limited to where they currently lived. And then here's another, just simple name, email, phone, and then just the city. Don't put your full address. Some resume templates have space for that, but you don't want your street address going out there. That's not necessary. You can put your zip code if you, particularly if you're looking to really narrowly target, but really just city and state is all that's typical on a current resume. So one question that came in prior to the session is, what do I do if I'm interested in remote work or if I'm interested in relocation? So on this slide, you have 3 different variations of what you can do where everything else is the same. But in the top one, the city and state, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So if I'm not wanting to move again and really committed to Nashville or the general metropolitan area, I would put Nashville, Tennessee in that city state. If I'm not limited to where I am and I'm willing and able to relocate anywhere, I'm going to instead put available to relocate within the United States. Or if I'm looking for remote work, I would put, my city and state, Nashville, Tennessee, and remote opportunities. If I'm only available for remote work, then I would kind of do a combination of the second and third. I would put available for remote opportunities. So you really are helping to guide the team who's looking at the resumes to see, why is this person from Nashville applying for a job in Seattle? Well, it says available to relo. So if we've got relocation funds available or are willing to consider somebody from outside of the Seattle market, then that makes this person accessible. If I just put Nashville, Tennessee, the Seattle folks might very well just overlook me because they're not seeing me as a local candidate. And it's important to know that some applicant tracking systems, really all of them do this, but some companies will set up their applicant tracking systems to show distance from the work location. And so if you're outside of a radius of, depending on the city, 25 miles, 50 miles, you might not be considered unless you flag it in a way that helps them look at you. All right, so I promised that I would talk about how to do the LinkedIn custom URL. So when you go to your profile on LinkedIn, you'll see up here in the top right-hand corner, it says Edit Public Profile and URL. When you click that, it talks you through the next steps, but you can put, preferably your name, as I did, Jennifer Belkwhite. If I were to do it again, I would probably change it to Jen Belkwhite because it's much shorter, but, and that's kind of what people know me as anyway. But now it's out there, too many people have it, and so I wouldn't want to take the chance of changing that. So definitely worth doing if you don't already have that custom URL. All right, let's talk about the branding statement. And again, this is optional for the resume, highly recommended on your LinkedIn profile in the place where a job title would go. So particularly if you're not currently working, but even if you are, if you're open to other opportunities, put your branding statement instead of your job title in that space. If they're doing a search on LinkedIn for job titles, they're going to see that in your employment history. But the branding statement really tells people what you offer that's not limited by a job title. So I put a few examples here, but just it is a phrase, a very short description. Think of it almost as the first sentence of your elevator pitch. Delivering leadership development and learning systems as a trusted business partner. Or demonstrated ability to optimize an organization through innovative problem solving, blah, blah. Bilingual operations focused learning leader with strong acquisition experience. It's the secret sauce. It's the piece that puts you over the edge and makes you different from the other candidates. So really strongly suggest working on that branding statement. You see here an example of how you can use it in a resume, Director of Training and Development, with this branding statement, impacting the bottom line with a strategic and comprehensive approach to learning and development. So the branding statement is showing what you bring to the company, what value add that you will have to them. All right, beyond the branding statement, you want to get into your professional summary or career profile. And this is really where it takes it further. This is your full value statement. Your career profile is going to articulate who you are, what you bring to the party, and what your strengths are. It's your hook, it's going to grab the reviewer's attention. It's going to make them get excited about you. It shows who you are, what you've achieved, what your strengths are, and allows you to really control the narrative and position yourself in the best light. You can do it as a short narrative, which I'm about to show you, or a bulleted list, whichever way makes the most sense for you. So here's an example for an instructional designer. An instructional designer, progressive experience. You're going to highlight instructor-led e-learning and blended training programs, organization, delivering within tight deadlines, communicating with SMEs, proficient in Storyline and Captivate, or highly proficient in Storyline and Captivate. These are the things that go beyond a specific job experience and illustrate who you are. So the career profile can also be a bulleted list, particularly if you have more of a variety of jobs. If you've done some instructional design, some training, some HR, and you're trying to really encapsulate all of that, a list can sometimes be more effective because all the ideas don't necessarily fit together in a paragraph. If you're more focused, like this particular one with the instructional designer, a paragraph can be a little bit more streamlined. All right, let's now move into the core competencies and areas of expertise. And by the way, I'm going to show you a resume that has all of these things as we go. So we're just kind of focusing on the specifics now, and then we'll get into the bigger picture. Your core competencies and your areas of expertise are your qualities, your characteristics, your strengths that, again, you really want to highlight. And my biggest piece of advice for you is with every core competency or area of expertise that you list on your resume, you want to be prepared to talk about in an interview. So as you're developing your list of core competencies, your areas of expertise, come up with a STAR interview example where you can talk about the situation, the task that you had to deal with, the action you took, and the result that occurred, particularly with a benefit to the business. If you can't come up with that specific interview example, this is not something that you want to have on your resume, because they're going to ask about these. And you need to have that example right at your fingertips so that you can really use it to highlight what expertise you have in that area. So I'm going to show you just some kind of random samples. Now, all of these are training and development related, but communication, project management, video editing, if you have that skill, attention to detail, the ADDIE method, culture and engagement, some specific technical skills if you have them. Now, don't list them under a heading called specific technical skills, but if you have those skills like Captivate or Storyline, Camtasia, anything like that, use them. Don't highlight basic skills that everybody should have, like Word or, internet. I see some resumes that still have that, and that's really, in today's world, just the price of admission is to be able to use Word and Excel and things like that effectively. But skills that are specific to your work. If you're an instructional designer who is an absolute expert on Adobe Captivate, you want to make sure that's highlighted in your core competencies as well as in your experience area. Speaking of experience, let's take a look at the experience section. Now, what I'm going to show you next is a typical resume for a field training manager. This is a real resume. I went to Indeed last week, and our company has the recruiter side of Indeed. So I actually went in as if I were searching for a field training manager and searched for current candidates. So this is real. I have hidden all of the actual job information, so I don't want to call anybody out on things that are problematic, but I wanted you to see what some of the mistakes are that are so easy to make. So this comes from, again, a current person who's out there looking for work as a field training manager. They're with a fast casual concept. Notice there's an introductory paragraph. This is in the experience section. Introductory paragraph talking about the person's growth through the company, which is nice to have. So started as a shift manager, became a GM, became a corporate field trainer. So, how they've progressed. Let's look at these. Responsible for the training of general and shift managers and cashiers, 50 stores. Training for new store openings, responsible for training, responsible for updates. Let me show you another one. Another typical resume, again, somebody who's currently out there looking for a field training manager job on Indeed. Title, company, years. Leadership responsibility for training and development for 250 sites. Develop culture change, collaborative partnership. Led, misspelled, and developed the leadership class program. Achieved improvements. Achieved company-wide performance standards. What do these tell me? Not much. These two pieces of resumes that I've just shown you tell me what your job description is. They do not tell me your achievements. So if you've got a resume that looks anything like this, where your bullet points in your experience are what your job duties were, you need to change it. You need to change it in order to be seen and to get past the applicant tracking system and the recruiter. So you're going to change it by focusing on your achievements. So here's an example of an achievement-focused accomplishment resume. Again, title, company, years. A brief 2 or 3 sentence description of what the job was. Developed and facilitated training for new managers and emerging leaders. Translated strategic and technical business plans into an L&D operations and 4 direct reports. Then your bullet points are going to be your quantifiable achievements. So this person streamlined leadership training by converting it to a blended learning program, resulting in annualized savings of 57 grand. As a recruiter, I look at that and I say, oh, I wonder what this person could do for us. They could have the same kind of benefit for us. Integrated 9-box succession planning to identify emerging leaders, which helped our retention. We were identifying the right people, and it led to a 30% increase. Again, that's something that I, as a recruiter or a hiring manager, I'm going to look at and say, wow, that's something that I want them to come do for me. Instead of, I led and developed a leadership class program. That doesn't tell me what benefit the leadership class program had. What did it do for the company? What was the ROI, or was it wasted? Achieve performance standards. Woohoo, you did your job. And again, I don't mean to be blunt, but that's really what people are looking at. A typical recruiter is honestly spending anywhere between 6 and 20 seconds glancing at a resume. And that's if it made it through the applicant tracking system. So in that 6 to 20 seconds, you have to be able to grab their attention. Now, one way this person did it is by bolding those metrics, bolding those quantifiable benefits. I like that because it really helps it stand out. Here's an example of one where it's not bolded and it doesn't stand out as much. So part of it, you'll have to look at your formatting of your resume and decide if the bolding would work for you. But again, here's a senior manager of training and development for a particular company. A slightly too long description of what the job was, but okay. And again here, the bullet points decrease training time by 33%. Fantastic. That saves me money as a company, as a hiring manager. That's something I want. Reduce turnover, increased customer loyalty score, reduce training expenses, finish developing the shift supervisor program 2 weeks ahead of schedule. All of those tell me as a hirer, what's in it for me? That tells me, here's why I want to talk to this person, because I want to see what they did and if what they did can translate to what our needs are for my company. All right. While you're putting together these accomplishment lists and these quantifiable metrics of what value you have provided, you also want to make sure that you've got some really great active verbs. And on the next slide, I'm going to give you just dozens, well, a few, good resume verbs to help show your accomplishments. So not just managed this, did this, implemented this, but really use some of these, maximized the value of leadership training by blah, 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 fostered employee engagement through blah, 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 So the verbs that make people kind of sit up are the ones where they can really see the action that you're taking. So I give this to you as a good, option to do. All right, let's move on to talk about the education section. So in education, you want to go most recent to oldest. So if you have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, you're going to put your master's degree first. Leave off your GPA if it's more than 5 years old, or if it's lower than a 3.4. Now we're going to talk, because sometimes the online applications require you to put a GPA. We'll get there, but on the resume itself, don't put it on there if it's more than 5 years old or if it's lower than a 3.4, because the resume itself is what's going to get passed on to the hiring manager. The hiring manager is not going to see the answers that you gave to the questions in the applicant tracking system in almost every case. When, you know, I'm interviewing for controllers right now, and our recruiting team passes, you know, puts the PDF of the resume in the Outlook invitation to me. That's all I see. And so you want your resume to really focus on what you want it to, even if you're forced to put other information in the online application. Do include the year of graduation. Now, those of us who are over 50 sometimes worry that year of graduation is gonna date us, but our experience is gonna date us anyway, you know, and often recruiters will think that you're trying to hide something, excuse me, if you don't put the graduation year. If you attended any college at all, don't include your high school. You know, I mean, unless you're maybe 2 years out of high school, but I'm assuming that most people on this call are further along in our careers than that. And so if you have any college, even if you don't have a degree, put the, you know, college you attended, and if applicable, the courses that are relevant, but don't put your high school on there. All right, and then let's go to certifications. Now, I put some of the most common certifications for those of us in the training and HR world here, but the CHT through the AHLEI, the CPLP, Certified Performance and Learning Professional, I think it is, through the Association for Talent Development. ISFET has an ADDIE for instructional design. They actually have 3 certificates. That's the International Society for Educational Technology. So instructional designers in particular may have 1 or more of those certificates. ServSafe, if it's applicable to the job that you're applying for. And if you have your PHR or SPHR or one of the SHRM certifications, you can. You can combine your education and certifications into a single section, or even on my most recent resume, I have my education certifications and professional affiliations all in a single group, primarily for spacing, because I was able to keep it all onto 2 pages and have it look good if I didn't have those separate headers. And so, you know, you kind of have to play with that as well, but they all fit. They're all really things that aren't job experience that help add value to the organization. So that certainly can go into a single group. All right, so we've talked about the sections of the resume. Now we're going to talk about how you are going to maximize those sections and add power to your resume so that it really stands out with the job application. And what I'm going to tell you next is going to take you time and energy and effort, but it will pay off. And that is, you want to target your resume to each specific job. So on this slide, I know it's very busy, so I hope you're not looking at this on a phone. This is a currently posted job post for an instructional designer. I found it 2 days ago. So this is as current as you're going to get, pretty much. And so if I were an instructional designer applying for this, I'm going to look, you know, you just see this company's looking for a project-based instructional designer, experience in managing projects, etc. I'm going to look at this and highlight all of the keywords in it. This is what they want. So I want to look for places where I, on my resume, can demonstrate that I can write, design, and develop classroom and e-learning, managing projects experience, that I'm deadline driven, that I'm flexible, dynamic, I get up to speed quickly, and I can create actionable and easily absorbable training, etc. So I'm going through and I'm highlighting all of the important elements where I can show how I stand out. On the next slide, I'm going to show you the next half of this very same job description. So just didn't have room on the slide for all of it. So the next half of the job description has the specific requirements. They prefer master's or bachelor's, 3 years of experience, etc. So again, I'm going to go through those requirements and I'm going to highlight the ones that I have. 3 years of work experience, check. Great writing skills, I am not going to put on my resume. Because here's the thing, if I'm a great writer, they're going to be able to see it from the way I write my resume. And if I'm not a great writer, telling them so is not going to convince them. Adult learning theory, got that. Storyline, Captivate, got it. And notice they say other e-learning development tools. So if I've used Rise, if I've used, iSpring, if I've used any of those others, I'm still going to put those on there as well. Learning management systems. Now, remember I said earlier, you're not going to highlight Microsoft Office because everybody's got that. But they specifically call out an affinity for word styles. So if I have a lot of good experience using the styles function in Word, I'm going to bring that to their attention, either in the resume or more likely for this job in the cover letter. Communicating across industries, quickly grasping concepts, project management skills. So again, I'm highlighting those pieces that I can demonstrate my value, my ability to match their requirements. Doreen, I see that your hand is raised, so I'm going to figure out how to let you ask a question. And then I see a couple of other questions in the Q&A I'll go ahead and address right now. So Doreen, I'm unmuting you, or I think you can unmute yourself, yeah.
Sorry, it was a mistake. It was a mistake.
Okay, and then I'm going to mute you again because you're echoing. But I am going to, since we're stopped, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Q&A. If I want to apply for an HR job and most of my experience is limited to training and development, how should I craft my resume? Talk to me, because that's exactly what I did. I had 15 years of experience in learning and development, and I shifted by framing my resume differently into an HR position. So my email's at the end of this because that's probably a one-off question. I'll be happy to speak with you separately about that if you just want to reach out to me through LinkedIn or through email. And then Brian asks, my college education was 20 years ago. Since then, I've attended seminars, webinars, continuing education. How would you showcase this? I'll pull up my resume and show you. I have maybe a small example of that can help highlight that. So at the end, we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so sorry about that diversion. I thought we had a question specifically about this. So we're going to target the resume. I've gone through, I've highlighted all the things that I bring, that I know that I can demonstrate. Now here's where I'm going to go back to my professional summary career profile. Instructional designer with progressive experience. I'm going to change that to instructional designer with 5 years of progressive experience, because they're asking for 3. If I've got 5 years of experience, let's highlight that, And again, instead of saying developing instructor-led e-learning and blended training programs, period, I'm going to say developed instructor-led e-learning and blended training programs based on adult learning theory. Instead of saying who consistently delivers within tight deadlines, I'm going to add high-quality products. So that when my resume goes through the applicant tracking system and looks for keywords, the system looks for keywords, it's going to match what they're looking for. So I've got my basic, kind of my master career profile, my standard, but then for every job, I may tweak it slightly based on what that job is asking for. Not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say I have 5 years experience if I only have 2. If I only have 2 years experience, I'm leaving that alone. I'm just gonna say instructional designer with progressive experience. But if I have something where I can really show them how my keywords match, I'm going to bring those in to the resume. So I can do it here in the career profile. I can do it in the core competencies. My original list of core competencies did not have learning management systems, but this job is specifically asking for experience with various learning management systems. So I personally have worked with 6 different learning management systems over my career history. So even though I may not have experience with the particular one they're using, you know, they're all similar enough that I'll be able to sort it out. They also specifically talk about adult learning theory. Now, I've studied adult learning theory, so I'm comfortable putting that on there as a core competency. If you haven't, don't. Because if they start asking you in the interview about Malcolm Knowles and andragogy, and you don't know anything about that, they're going to start questioning everything about you, and not just whether or not you really know adult learning theory. So again, you're never, ever, ever going to add keywords that don't truly reflect you and your skill set. But you are going to highlight the areas that match what their job requests. So, how to create a targeted resume. You're building that master resume, which includes everything. You know, I don't care if that master resume is 4 pages long. You're never going to actually send it out. But it's got your whole shebang. It's got all your core competencies, everything you can come up with. All your work experience with high impact quantified results. And a comprehensive career profile that you can edit as needed, as we just saw. So you'll have that document. You'll then look at the job posting, as we did. You'll identify the keywords and the requirements that they have, and then you're going to go in and edit your resume so that you select the competencies, no more than 12, and the results-based achievements in your work history that illustrate your fit for the role. And then, as we saw, you'll adjust that career profile if you need to add, you know, based on adult learning theory. And I'll tell you, some of the times that I've tweaked my career profile for a particular job application, I've actually kept it because I liked that addition to it. And so for resumes going forward, even if they don't specifically ask for adult learning theory, for example, I'll include that because that adds value and helps to step it up. So, couple of pieces of advice. Ideally, the keywords are going to be on your resume 3 times. So, you know, mixed among the core competencies and career profile, as well as in your experience section. And if applicable, use both words and acronyms. So instead of just writing learning management system, put parentheses LMS, because you don't know if the applicant tracking system is going to flag learning management system or LMS. And so you want to make sure that you are attracting yourself based on either one of them. And I said this before, but I'm going to say it again because it is the biggest don't out there. Don't lie. You know, when you're putting those keywords in, if they say they want somebody who can use Captivate, and you've never used Captivate, all you use is Storyline, and you're an expert in Storyline, but you don't use Captivate, don't put that you're good at Captivate. You know, I mean, you'll get caught. You'll be found out either when you get the job and can't immediately be up to speed on what they want, or, you know, at some point during the interview, it'll come out and they'll ask about, you know, give me a demonstration of something you've done in Captivate. I'm like, oops, can't do that. So don't ever lie. Talk about some other don'ts. Don't be sloppy or careless. Check your consistency of fonts. You want to make sure that 1 font is ideal, 2 at most. But also check consistencies of things like bolding. You know, am I bolding all my job titles? And I don't want to leave one out. You know, so make sure everything is consistent. Check consistency of bullet points. I'm saying this for Monique Donahue. So she's a stickler for bullet points, but so am I, and so are a lot of other people who are reading your resume. If you're ending one of them with a period, end them all with a period. If you're not ending any with a period, don't end any with a period. Be consistent. Same with your dashes, M dashes, N dashes, and hyphens. Make sure you're using them consistently. And check spelling and grammar beyond the spell check. We saw an example earlier where the person meant LED, lead, and he wrote LEAD, which also is lead, but not the right verb tense. So spell check's not going to catch that. Make sure that you are rereading and rereading and rereading. My college roommate taught me a trick that I use to this day for proofreading, and it's read it backwards. Read every word backwards because your eye can't flow over it and assume you've said something. If you're looking at each word backwards, you're going to catch any spelling issues. Don't include your photograph. A lot of the templates that are out there have photographs on them. A, that's really good real estate that you don't want to give up to a picture. B, unless the way you look has something to do with your capability of performing the job, it's not relevant. And the things that are on your resume should be relevant to your ability to perform the job. Now, you should have a professional, well done, high quality, not too small so it's pixelated, picture on your LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have that, that's the place to put the good picture, but don't put it on your resume. And don't use overblown writing. Don't try to sound fancier than it is. The more simple and straightforward your language on your resume, the more easily people are going to be able to understand what you're trying to say. Some more don'ts. Don't include opinions that can't be substantiated. Don't say that you're a hard worker. Instead, show what you have done. Show what your accomplishments are. Don't use opinion words to describe yourself. I said earlier, don't include an objective. Also, don't include references or a statement that says references will be provided upon request. You don't need that. It's expected that you're going to provide references when they ask them. Don't waste the space on your resume for that. Don't use more than 2 fonts, as we talked about, and 1 is better. Don't use such a small font or eliminate all the white space so that it's unreadable. And kind of along those lines, don't try to fit everything onto 1 page. If you have to go to 3 pages because your experience is vast, if all the pieces on those 3 pages are relevant to the job you're applying for, that's okay. 2 is better, because if you can't get everything that's important in 2, you're probably not being selective enough about the things that will help make you stand out. But depending on your experience, you may find that you have to go to 3. All right, enough with the don'ts. Let's talk about what you should do. Do include your contact info at the top of every page. Do include volunteer work if it's relevant to the skills. If you had a leadership position with a volunteer group, for example, or if you are on a board of an organization, that can be a relevant skill set depending on the job. So it's totally good to include that. You also do want to create a plain text version of your resume for uploading into applicant tracking systems. Without a plain text version, you're going to wind up with those little kind of funky symbols for all the dashes, and you're going to have to go through and clean it all up, and it will just be a mess. So once you have your master resume the way you like it, then do a version in Word where you clear all formatting and you just have it spaced out in totally unformatted, clean, plain text, then save it as a text file. It will save so much time if you're uploading a bunch of resumes to ATSs. It will help you. And then do use parallel structure for all lists and bullet points. And I'm gonna spend a little time going into that because it matters, and I wanted to really show you the value of that. So on one of the resumes that I pulled from Indeed, here's another version of another experience that this person had. They were a team trainer at a pizza concept. And so you can see the job duties, and this is verbatim from what they posted to Indeed. Supervise the cast members daily, train new and existing cast members, responsible for assisting, in charge of, make, and conference calls. So when I look at that, I see 3 verbs: supervise, train, make. Then I see responsible for, in charge of, and then I see assisting, and then I see something that's not even a verb. I mean, it's just all over the place. It's grammatically inconsistent, and it makes reading it harder. Even if it's just subconsciously, the person reading this is not gonna, the ideas are not gonna flow easily. And so it's going to get in your way. So instead, a quick rewrite allows all of these to be supervise, train, assist, manage, make, facilitate. These are all things that I did. I supervised, I trained, I assisted, I managed, etc. So make sure that you have that parallel grammatical structure in all of the bullet point items or list items on your resume. It's subtle, but it makes a huge difference. All right, now we're at the question time. So some of the questions that we tend to get are, what about online applications? What about cover letters? And then other questions. So I'm gonna address online applications and cover letters first, and then we'll look at the questions that are in the Q&A and in the chat. So online applications, sometimes you're forced to put salary requirements or expectations. You never want to have that on your resume, ever. But you may have to in the online application. If it allows you to skip it, skip it. If it doesn't, if it's a required, if it allows you to put in a word, put negotiable. Now, some systems are not built to allow words. They're limited to, you know, numerical entries in that. So if you can, you put a range. But if you have to put a specific number, put your desired salary median based on your research for what that job is worth in the local market. Don't put your minimum, because if you say that you'd take 50 and they were willing to offer 60, you're hurting yourself. But if your range is 50 to 70 and you know that that's, you know, kind of fits, then you put 60, that fits. Or sometimes if you just can't do anything else, I have at times, and I've heard other people suggest this as well, just put $1. I mean, it's clear that you want more than $1, but that allows you to get through the system without potentially lowballing yourself, you know. So those are several options to do if you have to put in your salary requirements. Sometimes online applicant systems require you to put dates, and not just months and years, but also actual date, like the day that you started. And some of us can't remember that far back. I mean, I've got that for a few jobs, but not all of them. So if you don't know it, if you know you started sometime in July, but you don't know exactly what day, just put the 15th. You know, that's a nice median. You've got to do something, so just put that in there. And then education, sometimes you run into issues with the online application because they force you to select a particular major that isn't really what yours was. I was a drama major, that's never there. Dramaturgy is the closest thing, you know? So if you have to tweak a little bit, you're limited by the system, so don't let that worry you. Cover letters are optional unless they're noted in the job posting. You will find, though, that some recruiters and some hiring managers have the perception that you don't care about the job if you don't take the time to write a cover letter. I am not that person. I very rarely read cover letters, but there are people out there. So if it's a job that you're really serious about, I'm going to strongly suggest that you that you create a cover letter. And at the end, in the kind of bonus content, I'm going to give you a quick and easy way to put together a good cover letter. This phrase is the way that, you know, the job posting that I showed you earlier for that instructional designer, this was included. It said, with your resume, please include a cover letter that describes why you're interested and why you would be a good fit. So your cover letter would have to include these things because they're specifically asking for it. All right, let's look at some of the other questions that are out there. I've got the Q&A up there. Chanel, we talked already. If you want to reach out to me to talk about that transition from HR, from training to HR, I'll be more than happy to talk individually with you about that. If you're still attending college, how do I list that? I'm still attending a graduate program, and I just put, you know, the degree that I'm going for and the name of the school, and then in parentheses, degree expected May 2022 or whatever it is. So, you know, you're putting the degree and then expected whatever date you think you're going to graduate. Can I show another example of what the top of your resume should look like or flow with name, info, and branding statement? Well, probably not off the top of my head because this is a PowerPoint that's put together. So I don't know that I come up with something quickly, but hang tight because I'll try and come up with a way. I can give you a resource for the website for one of the resume consultants that I have used in the past, and she has some examples on her website. So give me a moment to dig that up, and I promise I'll give it to you. So what would be the best subject line when sharing our resume for a job application to someone we don't know or a person who's completely unknown to the candidate? What would be the best subject line while sharing our resume for a job application to someone we don't know or a person who's completely unknown to the candidate? So if you're sending an email, instead of going through an online applicant tracking system and you want to go either through LinkedIn or you've gotten the person's email for that, the best thing would be to use the job title. And if the job posting has a requisition number, use that as well. So the email subject, I would use, you know, instructional designer, parentheses, job number, you know, A267 or whatever the requisition number is, because that way they're gonna know what it's for. You're applying for that specific job. Now, if you're sharing your resume for, you don't even know if there's a job, you're just wanting it in, that's trickier, and that's where you want to use LinkedIn more effectively, because if you build your network there with people that you know, not just reaching out randomly to people you've never had any interaction with, but if you build your network there, then quite often you can find somebody that you can connect through and get your resume passed along that way. You know, if not, then I would take something like a shorter version of my branding statement and say, you know, something like experienced instructional designer who can add value to, and then use the actual name of the company. You know, avoid saying your company or anything generic like that, because they're going to think you didn't take the time to personalize it to them. And oh my gosh, while I'm saying that, let me tell you something that happened one time. We got a cover letter addressed to our competitor. Don't do that. I mean, this guy was clearly cutting and pasting and just messed up, you know. So proofread before you send things out. Should we add our professional link URLs like the LinkedIn profile ID in a resume nowadays? Yes, that should be part of your contact information. So like if you have a professional website, you know, I used to, don't really manage that anymore, but you can include that like your LinkedIn profile up at the top with your contact. Will the deck be shared? This will actually be posted on the chart website. And so you'll be able to go back and watch the presentation and see all of it again at some point soon. So question, should you use a more generic version of your resume on LinkedIn or other profile sites rather than the targeted info on a specific resume, or should you post your entire master version? That's a great question. And my answer would be, it really depends on how much longer your master version is than your standard. As a general rule, the master version on LinkedIn is better. And the reason is, when recruiters go into LinkedIn and they search for candidates, you can actually do a project in LinkedIn where you're, I'm looking for people in a certain geographical market, or people who have said they're open for remote work or open to reload or whatever, who have these skills. And so the LinkedIn is going to return to me a list of people who fit all of the characteristics that I have targeted in that recruiting project. And so if you've got something on your master resume that highlights that, then you're more likely to show up as a passive candidate that I might be able to reach out to. So as a general rule, now if your master resume is pages long, 6 or 8 or 10 pages, you're not going to have room for that. The LinkedIn limitations will shut you down. But for most of us, the master resume is the way to go on that. All right, any other questions? I need to look at the chat and see if anything has come through the, 10 in the chat, let's see.
Most of those are just real chats. But one of the questions that did come up on the chat section was whether or not using Word templates really is recommended when you have to upload it through the applicant tracking system because of the text boxes.
Yes, and that's why I suggested creating a plain text version of your resume that you're going to upload for the applicant tracking system. That's not going to have any formatting, not going to have any headers, no text boxes, no anything. It is just pure plain text. And so that way it's not gonna mess up any of the things that are hidden in text boxes. You're still going to then put a PDF attachment of your pretty resume onto that application in the same way that you'll put a PDF attachment of a cover letter and anything else that they might request. But you really want that plain text version so that you can upload cleanly into the ATS.
And the second question in the chat section really was just about including your year of graduation. I know you addressed that and said you want to put it on there, but if age really is going to be a detriment, do you take your chances and not list it and let them wonder?
Yes, because you're really, as a general rule, you're only going to be including the last 10 to 15 years of experience for those of us who have a lot more than that, and then might just have a little line at the bottom that says previous experience includes blah, 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 blah. And so in that case, just don't put dates on anything except your jobs. Don't leave it off of some things and not others. So yeah, at that point, I would just put where you are. Now, an online application may still require it though. So, depending on the applicant tracking system, you may have to put the year of graduation.
Okay, and one other quick question that just came in on the Q&A. How far back work experience do you list on your resume?
Again, typically 10, 12 years, really no more than 15, unless you're in a situation like, so to kind of partly answer Chanel's question, my early career experience was in HR. And then I got into training and then wanted to move back into HR. So I had to use some of my experience that normally would have been off my resume years ago because it was, back in the last millennium. But I needed that because I needed to show experience in certain areas of HR. So it really does depend on the circumstances, but if you're applying for a job in a field that you've been in for the last 10 to 12 years, then that's typically sufficient.
Okay, and I think that is all of our questions, plus we're right at an hour. So we should wrap it up. Thank you so much, Jen, for participating in this. That was really helpful.
Okay, I'm going to just throw 3 more quick slides on there. Couple of resources. Jobscan.com is a site that will help you match your resume to the keywords in a job posting. So you copy and paste the job posting in, then you copy and paste your resume in, and it's going to tell you, yeah, you're 75% there, but you're missing this, this, and this. So it's a really nice tool. The first 5 are free, and then it's like you get 2 free a month. So it's not, and they have a paid subscription too, but it is a really nice way to see how that keyword thing matches up. AbsolutelyAbby.com is a great place. She does these free career wake-up calls a couple of times a month where you can put in questions or just call and listen in, however you want to do it. Her website's a little dated, but the career wake-up calls are really, really helpful. And then I am going to have to look up Lisa's website, the one that I was telling you about that has the samples of the branding statements, but I know that Tara has everybody's email, so I'm going to send out an email after this that has the information that we don't have time to get to on the cover letters, as well as that additional resource. And then I just wanted to give you some job boards. ihirehr.com and linkup.com are 2 that are relatively new. ihirehr.com will also do that matching of your resume to the keywords in the job posting. Flexjobs.com, for those of you who are looking for remote work, it focuses on remote work. At Chart, of course, we have a job board, and then we also have a relatively new section called Talent for Hire, where Chart members who are looking for work can post your skills and experience. And then if I'm looking for somebody to do remote training, or if I'm looking for somebody to do instructional design or whatever, I can go there and look and see who's available. And then ATD and SHRM also have job boards in our field. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. I hope you found this helpful. My LinkedIn contact is here. Please feel free to connect with me if we're not already, or my email if you have individual questions that you would like answered. I am absolutely happy to dive in and share more information if I've got it. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jen. Bye-bye.